What's going on, fellow humans and resellers? This is James for AdoptionAgency.com, 23 years selling full-time on eBay. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the business of reselling. Now, if you're just doing this part-time or for fun, you don't need the money type of thing, this video may not fit into anything that you might find useful. It's more going to be focused on people who's trying to do this long-term, who's doing this, wants to do this full-time, who are doing this full-time. So as I am scrolling through YouTube and seeing all these different resellers, and then you hear about all the resellers who have quit recently. As I'm scrolling through here, I got one question that keeps coming to mind, wondering if any of these people can answer this question. And this question is, what is your business plan? Now, if you want to do this long term, like I've always said, it's about building a business. It's not about hustling every day to just resell. You need a long-term plan. And that's where a business plan comes into play. Now, a business plan is a document that describes your business, its goals, and how are you going to achieve them. Now, if you're just starting out, those questions can be very overwhelming. So I'm going to try to break it down and maybe use my business as an example on how I viewed it when I started and stuff. So a document that describes your business. What is your business? When I first started, my business was going to be a record store online. The goals. What was my goals when I first started? I wanted to build a huge online marketplace for music, for people to come to and buy. And how will you achieve them? My goal achieving them was, at the time, was a lot of the music stores were closing down because people were going online to buy. So I wanted to take advantage of that and buy out a lot of the closing record stores, which I did. So those were what described me when I first started. So what describes you? What is your business? What are your goals? And how are you going to achieve them? For me, how will you achieve them is probably the most detailed one you really need to focus on the most, because you need to worry about how you're getting merchandise. You need to worry about where you're going to sell your merchandise. You're going to have to worry about how many hours a day can you put into building this goal. There's a lot of details when it comes to how are you going to achieve being a reseller, or with these days, staying in business as a reseller. So let's see if we can pull anything else from here. Executive summary, a concise overview of your business, including its mission, vision, and goals. Company description, a more detailed description of your business and why it exists. Marketplace analysis, an assessment of your target market and the competition. That's a good one, especially for 2025. Who is your target market, right? First off, what are you selling? Where are you getting it? Do you have an abundance of it in your area? And who are you going to target that to? And most importantly, how is your competition? Because one of the things is, if you may have access to all this great stuff, but if your competition can get it cheaper, then you're always going to be that underdog. It's not saying you can't succeed, but you need to know your competition in order to compete. A description of the products and services you offer, including pricing and unique benefits. That kind of plays into what do you have access to. For me, when I first started, it was the music. I had 9 years of experience in a music store. I knew that things were changing. I knew a lot of stores were closing, and I knew I could get all this product for pennies on the dollar. So, what is your layout look like? Is it just winging it, going to thrift stores and hoping? Or do you have enough knowledge in your area that that knowledge will help you succeed when it comes to thrifting your area or buying in your area, whatever the case may be, because you're the most knowledge of that item or those items, whatever the case may be, in your area. It's very hard to just go straight into this cold and naive and ignorant. If you go into this with those, there's a good chance you're just going to fall off eventually. The more you know, the stronger you're going to be. The more structured your business is, the more answers you have up front, the stronger your business is going to be. And the more work, the more consistent, just driving work you can put into it, the more successful you're going to be. Marketing strategy, a plan for attracting and retaining customers, including advertisement and distribution channels. For this one, for me, this one is more like create something that people are going to remember. Create a name that someone's going to remember. When I first started, and still today, I guess, when did American Pickers go on TV? But picking was a big word in the early 2000s. So I chose Urban Picker, being I grew up in the city. Urban Picker was very specific. It kind of spells out what it is. And then over time, I would have, like I had a store called Brick Alley Cat, which is kind of a different feel. But for me, it felt OG, if you will, being I used to dumpster dive as a kid. So the Brick Alley Cat type of thing. And then over time, adopting and coming up with Redoption Agency, which is a play on the whole repurpose, reuse, recycle wording, but putting a twist on it, making it more personal with adoption, redoption. And then instead of just calling it like store or something, pulling a unique word in there like agency, I felt made it pop and more memorable. So what is your marketing name? What unique characteristics are you going to create with your brand? The one good thing about branding is if you have a good enough plan behind a name, you can make that name whatever you want it to be. One example I always liked, and I'm gonna pull this back into like a band and an artist, is like in the 80s there was this band called Slaughter. Now, if you listen to 80s music and you just heard that name, you probably automatically thought they were like a death metal thing, Slaughter. But yet they ended up being a hair band glam metal thing. But they created that persona and changed the level of that word in the eyes of their consumer. So when people heard the word Slaughter, they didn't automatically think a death metal band like Slaughterhouse was, but they changed the perceptions. That's the beauty about finding a name. You can create what that name means. Whether that's with a logo, when it comes to business stuff, they used music, obviously. With a logo, with a secondary statement, mine's Redoption Agency, Vintage, and Discontinued. So you're going to come to mind, and you're probably going to find stuff that you can't go out and buy new in a store. So what is your branding? What is a lot of I see people who don't put enough effort into that, and their eBay user ID is just something generic, just letters and word numbers together that don't really mean anything. If you want to do this long term, you definitely need to focus in on a brand um, that people are going to remember and come back to. Financial projections, balance sheets, and other relevant financial information. For this one, if you're just starting out, how long can you go without taking a paycheck? That's huge in a lot of businesses across any spectrum, whether it's online or standalone mom and pop shops. A lot of people can't and don't take a paycheck right out of the gate unless they have a financial institute that loaned them the money to do that. And then that would be something you would include in your business plan. If you had access to XYZ money from bank XYZ, then you're probably within your business plan going to be able to structure something where you can take a payroll because you're just taking it from that loan money, which I wouldn't recommend, but it can be done. If you're a one man or a husband and wife show, I wouldn't recommend that right out of the gate. But because for that, you got to think a lot bigger than just, a few thousand piece eBay store. That's another thing too. Are you building this slowly by not using any financial loans or money? Are you just building slow, selling, reinvest, build, slow, reinvest, build? Or are you, like I did, like we did, we had personal credit cards that we set aside just for the business because we couldn't get a business loan at that time. And we make the money when you buy, with all these stores going out of business, charge it. Knowing that because the plan I had in place, that it was eventually going to catch up and I would be able to eventually get on top of it and eliminate that debt. But that was part of the plan, the business plan. So if you have not, and you are selling now, and you are full time and you're struggling, lay out a plan of action if you don't have one, of just all these details I talked about, where you're getting your items, what items are you getting, how is your competition on those items. Another thing that I use a lot, and I feel some people don't or take for granted, is you can outwork your competition. If your competition's only putting in 6 hours, but you can match everything else they're doing, well, if you can do it for 12 hours, you can get a leg up on your competition. So never take that for granted, the time that you invest into what you're doing. And especially if you're right out of the gate, like I've always said, you can't expect to work a 40-hour work week. You're giving up 40 hours to work 80 hours for yourself. That statement should be just plastered on your forehead. Work 80 hours, outwork everybody. But here's the thing, if you're just winging it, you can work till you're blue in the face and still fail. But you have to have some kind of structure, some kind of business plan. You've got to have the consistency of working and putting in that effort and having the systems in place when it comes to selling online, like I've shown you in that how to create 200 listings in one day. If you have the systems to take the pictures, to create the drafts, to make the listings, to shipping the items, if you have that system and you play it every day, it only gets quicker and quicker and quicker. And you get it more focused and refined as you're doing it. And in the long term, that helps you because then you're spending less time. You're spending the same amount of time on more items. You know what I mean? You're getting more listed quicker than you were last year. You're shipping out more in the same time period that you did last year. So maybe you could ship out, 30 in an hour, where now you can do 30 in 30 minutes type of thing. So having the systems in place to be able to achieve those goals is huge when it comes to a business plan and having a routine. And like I said, it may be very flawed at the beginning, but if you pay attention as you go and you keep your mind open as to how can I tweak this, how can I make this better, then you're just going to keep setting yourself up for growth. And that's one thing I wrote down here is you must grow. If you don't have a focus on growth, if your only focus is, hustling every day, you can hustle every day, but are you growing? Is your income growing? Is your inventory growing? Is your business growing? Or are you just hustling every day and you're just flat? You're doing the same as you did last month, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, last year. Just because you're hustling every day and doing the same thing every day, whether that's not putting in enough hours, not learning enough about the product you're selling, not selling the correct product that's working right now. Trends come and go. That's another thing you got to keep an eye on too for long-term growth is being able to switch it up over time. You have big businesses who've closed because they never switched up. Kmart's, Sears, Best Buys, Circuit Cities, Barnes and Borders. So many businesses have closed because they didn't change. There's so many of those businesses that I looked at and go, man, if they would have done X, Y, Z, there's a good chance that name would still be around. Kind of like when Sears went from catalog to standalone stores in malls. That was a change. So why didn't Sears really adapt to the changing market after the malls? They didn't. Why not? You must be able to adapt to everything. Depending on your age, you're going to have a good chunk of your life where there's going to be several changes within your business, clientele-wise, or product-wise, even how you get your product. Nothing lasts forever. I've had 1.5 million different ways I used to get product. A lot of them are gone now. So you always have to be able to adapt when it comes to business. And if you have a solid business plan in place, it makes adapting when the time is right that much easier. Because all you have to do is change maybe 1 or 2 variables in that plan and add it to it. The good thing I would do is I would dabble. So I had my business plan. I knew what I was doing. Boom, 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 boom. At first it was all music, all DVDs, video games, but then I would dabble here and there. Okay, let's try some retail arbitrage to see how this works. Let's dabble in Lego, see how that works. Let's dabble in shoes. So you would always dabble in all these, and then clothes and whatever. So over all those years, I've always dabbled. So then I knew that, hey, once this music starts going down, well, which one of these dabbles worked out best? And I have the most access to grow as I did the very first business, right? So having all that, keeping an eye open for all that information is crucial in long-term success. Doing this 23 years on just basically one platform, eBay, there's something to that. I've made some right choices, right? I've been able to to escape the downfall of music when streaming and things like Spotify started taking over, and people weren't buying physical media as much. Being able to adapt, got into the hats, and then when everybody started doing the hats, well, I got to adapt again. So there's something to be said about always keeping your eye open to a new avenue, trying to think of things that somebody else may not be doing, or the competition for that is something that you can conquer or at least compete with, right? I think one thing about a business plan is when you have it in place and it's a solid plan, don't deter from it, because deterring from it can, if you change on the fly and you change blindly, it's the same as starting out blind. There's, no matter how successful you are, if you change blind, you're going to drop. Now, whether you can recover from that will be another story, but you're going to take a fall if you just blindly change. So always don't deter from your business plan, but always keep the eye open for something you can tweak within that plan to make your business better. And this one I feel, and I've said this a few times in some videos, because I feel too many people do it. There's too many people who worship YouTubers. They take everything that they say as gold. They follow their rules, their method, word for word, and expect not to fail. Yet, some fail. You cannot follow all YouTube or a YouTuber blindly. Like I said, I've always recommended watching many people, how they do it, and adapting something from whatever, adapting one or two things that work for you within your variables, because your variables are going to be different than, unless you're living right next door and you have all the exact knowledge that the YouTuber is speaking. If you're on that same level as them, then you're going to be able to take every word for word. But chances are you're not. You're going to be in a different market, a different area. People in Florida can go to flea markets all year long. People in Chicago, St. Louis, they can't. Somebody brought that point up, and it was a good point, on one of my videos. Everybody's going to be different depending on your location, depending on your skill set, depending on your work ethic. So never follow blindly any YouTuber, unless it's me and you're just following me because my butt's sexy. But that's another story, and that's another video, and I need to open OnlyFans for that one. Joking. But I hope that makes sense. I got written down here, Mike Tyson's statement: everyone has a plan until you're punched in the face. But if you have a solid business plan, they're all not going to work. But the more detailed you have that plan, the more knowledge you have about your competition, the more access you have to product. Those factors can determine your success or your failure. Well, I hope this makes sense. I'm going to rewatch this back just to make sure it wasn't just a jumbled mess, and it feel like it had something to it. If you've seen this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are not, and ask yourself, Does this person have a business plan? 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 Do you have a business plan? All right. Thanks, everybody. See you all in the next video. Later.